Sunrise in Vegas always seems unnatural, like a cheap light bulb suddenly turned on in a smoke-filled casino. I hate that moment when the nighttime city, full of artificial glitz, suddenly looks so vulnerable in the morning light. Today, that feeling was amplified tenfold when I pulled up to the abandoned Desert Oasis Motel 20 miles outside of town. The body was discovered by a local vagrant looking for a place to sleep. He probably regrets his curiosity now. I, Detective Zaira Okomo, after 20 years with the Las Vegas Police Department, have seen a lot, but this scene made even me freeze in the doorway for a moment. The room was cheap, even by roadside motel standards. Faded wallpaper, cracked paint on the ceiling. The smell of blood mingled with the stale smell of mold. On the floor, in the center of the room, lay body parts, neatly arranged in some kind of perverse composition. The woman's head lay separately, her eyes open, as if she were still watching those who entered. I will never get used to the frozen gaze of the dead. Okomo, you won't believe it. Jackson, the medical examiner, called me over. Take a look. He pointed to the victim's chest. Inside, where the heart should have been, lay a rolled-up piece of paper, protected by a plastic bag. Putting on gloves, I carefully removed the note. You took the lives of others. Now I've taken yours. Do you know who she is? Jackson asked, taking pictures of the body. Not yet, but we'll find out soon. I walked around the room, studying every detail. There was a lot of blood, but the splatters indicated that she wasn't killed here. She was brought here already dead, and the dismemberment took place in the bathroom. Traces were found there. The work was methodical, not spontaneous. The killer knew what he was doing. A driver's license was found in the victim's purse. Nikia Jamel, 27 years old. The photo on the document showed an attractive young woman with a confident gaze and a slight smile. Now, there was nothing left of that smile. There are fingerprints all over the room, the technician reported, but most of them are old. The killer wore gloves. I nodded. I already understood that this was not a spur-of-the-moment killing. Someone had planned everything very carefully. On the way to the station, I thought about the note. You took the lives of others. Plural. Who did the killer mean? And what did took lives mean? Murders? Or something else? At the station, the first thing I did was run Nikia through the database. A few minor offenses, drunk driving, petty drug possession 4 years ago. Nothing serious. Place of employment, Amethyst nightclub, one of Vegas's elite strip clubs. Any relatives? Captain Forrest asked when I went in to report. We're looking. According to preliminary data, no one in the city. Her parents are in Detroit, but she hasn't been in touch with them for the last 5 years. What about the note? Any ideas? Too early to say. I rubbed my temples. Maybe she infected someone with a disease, or set someone up. We're checking all her connections. After leaving the captain's office, I decided to start with Nikia's workplace. Amethyst looked completely different during the day than it did at night. Without the neon lights and loud music, it seemed like an ordinary, shabby building. Inside, cleaners were preparing the premises for the evening, and behind the bar, the manager was counting yesterday's takings. Detective Zaira Okomo, homicide. I showed my badge. I'd like to talk about Nikia Jamel. The manager, who introduced himself as Leroy, frowned. Did she do something wrong? I'm not surprised. She was a feisty girl. When was the last time you saw her? The night before last. She didn't show up for her shift yesterday and wasn't answering her phone. He clearly didn't know about her death. I decided not to tell him yet. I wanted to get unbiased answers. How long has she been working here? About 3 years. One of the most popular. The clients loved her. He smiled. Although her personality is a nightmare. She's temperamental and does whatever she wants. Did she have any conflicts? Maybe with colleagues or clients? Leroy snorted. A girl like that always has conflicts. She recently had a serious argument with Tiffany, another of our dancers. Something about a mutual client. And then there was that rich tech guy. What's his name? Darius. He would come in and make a scene. Darius? Do you remember his last name? Tambo, I think. A regular client, only for Nikia. Rich, some kind of computer genius. I asked for the contact details of Tiffany and the other girls who worked with Nikia. In the dressing room, I met several dancers who had come to prepare for the evening performances. When I told them about Nikia's death, their reactions varied. Shock, disbelief, and, in some cases, what seemed to me to be poorly concealed relief. Tiffany, a tall, slender girl with intricate braids, wiped away her tears, but I saw something else in her eyes besides grief. Did you have a recent conflict with Nikia? She stole my regular client, Tiffany said with a bitter smile. She always did that. She saw something valuable in others and took it for herself. What was her relationship with her clients like? Complicated, another dancer, Sheila, interjected. She knew how to keep them hooked. She didn't just take their money, she seemed to own them. Did she have any particularly close relationships? The girls exchanged glances. Darius Tambo, Tiffany said. He was crazy about her. And Jabari Kinte, a big shot at the casino. They say he paid for her apartment. What about women? Did she have any friends? Rivals? Friends? Sheila laughed. Nikia didn't have friends, only those she used. But there was one woman, a music producer, Malika, I forgot her last name. Nyong'o, Tiffany prompted. She and Nikia were either friends or enemies. It was a complicated relationship. I wrote down the name. One more person to check. Did Nikia seem troubled lately? Was she afraid of someone? She never seemed troubled, Tiffany replied. Nikia was always in control, or thought she was. After Amethyst, I went to Nikia's apartment, a spacious flat in a prestigious neighborhood. Too expensive for an ordinary dancer. She definitely had patrons. The apartment was immaculately clean and stylishly decorated. No signs of a struggle. In the bathroom, I found an impressive collection of medications. Among them were antiretroviral drugs used to treat HIV. The prescription was written 3 months ago. That could explain the note. You took the lives of others. If Nikia knew about her status and didn't tell her partners, in the bedside table drawer, I found Nikia's personal phone. There was no password, a lucky break for us, a fatal mistake for her. Scrolling through her messages, I found a conversation with Darius Tambo. The last message from him was 3 days ago. You ruined my life. You'll pay for this, I swear. I also found Malika Nyong'o's contact information in the phone. Their correspondence was tense, with hints of some shared secret and mutual accusations. On my way back to the station, I was already formulating a plan of action. Darius Tambo, with his threats, became the prime suspect. But I also had to check on Malika Nyong'o and this mysterious Jabari Kinte. Nikia's story was getting darker and darker. A stripper who knew she was HIV positive, possibly deliberately putting her partners at risk. Someone decided she deserved the most severe punishment. As I leaned back in my chair in my office, looking at the crime scene photos, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Behind this murder lay a web of lies, pain, and revenge. And I was just beginning to untangle the first threads. Information about Darius Tambo came quickly. A successful entrepreneur, founder of a tech startup valued at millions. He had recently canceled several important meetings due to personal circumstances. I dialed his number. Mr. Tambo, Detective Zaira Okomo, Las Vegas Police Department. We need to talk. It's about Nikki Jamel. A long pause, then a hoarse voice. I don't know any Nikki. An obvious lie. I could almost hear his pulse quickening through the phone. Mr. Tambo, I have your correspondence with her, and your threats. I suggest we meet voluntarily, otherwise our next conversation will be in the presence of your lawyers. Another pause. Okay, he finally said. When and where? We agreed to meet tomorrow morning at the station. I had the night to gather more information about him and the other suspects. I felt that the solution was close, but experience told me that first impressions are rarely correct. The obvious often hides a much more complicated truth. I looked again at the photos of Nikia's body and the note found in her chest. Whoever the killer was, he considered himself the dispenser of justice. I was going to prove that real justice looks very different. Mornings at the police station are always the same. The smell of cheap coffee, the hum of voices, and the wariness in the eyes of everyone who enters. I stare at the face of Darius Tambo sitting across from me, trying to see the killer in him. At first glance, he doesn't look like someone capable of dismembering a person. 35 years old, stylish suit, well-groomed hands, a successful businessman. But I've been working in the police force too long to judge by appearances. Mr. Tambo, tell me about your relationship with Nikia Jamel. He swallowed, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. We met at Amethyst about a year ago. She was special. So special that you threatened her? I placed a printout of their correspondence on the table. His message: you ruined my life. You'll pay for this, I swear. Darius turned pale. You don't understand. His voice broke. She knew she had HIV and didn't tell me. I found out about my status a month ago, when I realized that I could only have gotten it from her. Tears of rage glistened in his eyes. I loved her. I invested money in her career. And she took my future away from me. So much so that you decided to take her life? I asked, watching his reaction closely. Darius looked up. What? She's dead? Either he really didn't know, or he was an incredibly good actor. Nikia Jamel was murdered 3 days ago. Where were you on Tuesday night? He looked shocked. I was in San Francisco at a conference. I can provide tickets, hotel camera recordings. Provide them. In the meantime, tell me what else you know about Nikia. Who did she associate with? Who might have had a reason to want her dead? Besides me and a dozen other men she infected? Darius smiled bitterly. She lived in a world of constant intrigue. She moved among the rich and powerful. Name names. Jabari Kinte, owner of several casinos, her main patron. She also often mentioned someone named Malika, a music producer. They were sometimes friends, sometimes enemies. He paused, then added, and Nikia also talked about some kind of list. I thought she was joking, but one time she was drunk and let slip that she kept track of everyone she slept with, like trophies. After talking to Darius, I sent a request to check his alibi and contacted the medical center where he was diagnosed. They confirmed that Darius Tambo had been diagnosed with HIV 32 days ago. In search of other potential victims of Nikia, I started with medical records. I managed to establish that in the same clinic where Nikia was treated, 7 other men had tested positive for HIV in the last 6 months. Coincidence? Doubtful. After calling the health department, I received unofficial confirmation. At least 3 of these men had identified Nikia as a possible source of infection. The picture was becoming increasingly grim. A girl who knew about her illness and continued to endanger her partners. But was it revenge on the part of one of them? Or was the answer deeper? Malika Nyong'o was not difficult to find. Her studio was located in a fashionable area of Las Vegas. A 30-year-old woman with short hair and a penetrating gaze welcomed me into her office, whose walls were decorated with platinum discs and photographs of celebrities. Nikia? She said when she heard the name. Such a sad story. I heard about what happened. Were you close? I asked, noting her calm tone. Once upon a time, she paused. Nikia knew how to be charming, but it was just a mask. Did you know about her diagnosis? Something flashed in Malika's eyes. Pain, anger. I found out by accident. She left her pills in my bathroom. When I asked her about it, she laughed, said it was her little secret. And you weren't worried that she might infect others? Malika turned away toward the window. I tried to talk to her, She said it was none of my business, that she had a right to privacy. When was the last time you saw her? About a week ago. She came here wanting me to produce her demo. She had ambitions to be a singer. And you agreed? Malika shook her head. Nikia had no talent, only a desire for fame. I refused, and we had a falling out. Where were you on Tuesday night? Her eyes narrowed. Am I a suspect? Just a question. At the studio, working with an artist. There are cameras here, you can check. I made a note. Something about her calmness disturbed me. Do you know Darius Tambo? A slight tension in her posture. We met a few times, at events. What about Jabari Kinte? Everyone in Vegas knows Jabari. As I was leaving, Malika stopped me. Detective Nikia wasn't a good person. She used people. That doesn't justify murder. Of course, a slight smile flitted across her lips. But not all victims are innocent, are they? After meeting with Malika, I went to the leading casino in Las Vegas, the Empire of Destiny, owned by Jabari Kinte. It took 3 phone calls and the threat of a warrant to get a meeting. Kinte received me in his office on the top floor, a 40-year-old man with an authoritative gaze and an impeccable suit. People like him are used to controlling everything and everyone around them. Detective Okomo, he said my name with a slight accent. How can I help you? Nikia Jamel, I said, watching his reaction. Not a muscle moved in his face. A sad story. I've heard about it. Did you know her? Of course. I patronize many talented young women in this city. Did that patronage include financial support? We found regular transfers from your accounts to hers. He shrugged. I helped her with rent, expenses. There's nothing unusual about that. And what did you get in return? Jabari smiled. The company of an intelligent, beautiful woman. Sometimes that's enough. Did you know about her HIV status? Now I noticed a reaction, a slight tension in the corners of his eyes. No, he replied after a pause. But we weren't close in that sense. I pretended to believe him. When was the last time you saw her? About 2 weeks ago. She asked for additional money for some project with Malika Nyong'o. They were working together? Nikia wanted to, but as far as I know, Malika refused. They didn't get along very well. Before leaving, I asked, "Where were you on Tuesday night, Mr. Kinte?" "At a charity event at my casino. Hundreds of witnesses, detective. I'll check, of course. But people like Kinte rarely get their hands dirty themselves. If he was involved, he probably acted through intermediaries." Returning to Nikia's apartment for a more thorough search, I noticed a bookshelf that I had only glanced at before. Among the design albums and unread classics was a worn book. Pulling it out, I saw that it was a leather-bound diary. Inside was a real treasure trove, Nikia's personal diary, filled with small, nervous handwriting. I immersed myself in reading, and a portrait of a woman began to emerge before me, much more complex and traumatized than I could have imagined. Nikia wrote about her childhood in a poor neighborhood of Detroit, about the abuse she had suffered, about how she had vowed never to be a victim again, about how she had moved to Vegas with dreams of fame, but found only new ways to be exploited. And then, 3 months ago, an entry about her diagnosis. Positive. The doctor said I can live a normal life with medication. Normal? After what he did to me, infecting me, he talks about a normal life? And then, the most disturbing part. Maybe this is a sign. Maybe it's time to stop being a victim once and for all. They use me. Why can't I use them? I won't tell them anything. Let them feel what it's like when your future is stolen. The last entries contained the names of men, the list Darius had mentioned. But it wasn't just a tally of trophies. Nikia deliberately infected them as revenge for her own pain. Among the names was Aaron Nyong'o. Comparing the dates, I realized that it must be Malika's brother. There were several mentions of him in the diary. Aaron is so naive. He fell in love right away. He says I changed his life. Oh, sweetie, you have no idea how much. And the last entry about him, dated 2 months earlier. Malika called. She screamed that Aaron found out about the diagnosis, that he's depressed, that I need to talk to him. Why? What can I say? Sorry for infecting you with an incurable disease out of spite? She doesn't understand that he meant nothing to me, just another name on the list. Closing the diary, I felt a chill run down my spine. The story was getting darker and darker. I dialed my assistant's number. Check the information on Aaron Nyong'o, Malika's brother. Any incidents in the last couple of months? The answer came half an hour later, as I was returning to the station. Aaron Nyong'o, 25 years old, committed suicide 6 weeks ago, jumped from the balcony of his 12th floor apartment. I felt the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. Malika had lost her brother, the brother whom Nikia had deliberately infected with HIV, which may have led him to commit suicide. I remembered Malika's cold stare, her calm voice when she talked about Nikia. Not all victims are innocent. Is that enough motive for murder? More than enough. However, something told me that the story was even more complicated. I went back to the diary and noticed another strange entry dated a week before the murder. M is threatening to tell everyone. She says she has proof, as if I have anything to lose. But if she really does go public with this, I'll have to tell everyone about her dirty little business. Let's see what her high society clients say when they find out who's really supplying them. What business? And who is M? Malika Nyong'o? And what evidence could she have? I needed to talk to her again. But first, I had to check one more detail. I called the lab. Do you have the results on the fingerprints found in Nikia's apartment? Yes, detective. Most of them belong to the victim herself. There are a few that belong to Darius Tambo and Jabari Kinte, which is not surprising. But there are also some unidentified ones. Compare them with Malika Nyong'o's fingerprints. I knew that her fingerprints had to be taken for her recording studio license. An hour later, the answer came. Match. Malika Nyong'o was in Nikia Jamel's apartment shortly before the murder. But she said she last saw Nikia in her studio. Another lie. The picture was starting to come together. Nikia Jamel, a dancer who took revenge on the world for her pain by infecting her partners with HIV. Among them was Malika's brother, who couldn't cope with the diagnosis and committed suicide. And now Malika, hiding some secret that Nikia had threatened. I knew I was close to solving the mystery. But to prove Malika's guilt, if she was indeed guilty, I needed irrefutable evidence. And for that, I needed to understand what dirty business Nikia had mentioned in her diary. A sleepless night of work lay ahead, and a meeting with Malika, who could explain a lot, or confuse me even more. The morning greeted me with a gloomy sky and a headache. I had slept poorly, haunted by images of Nikia's dismembered body and tantalizing fragments of theories. Too much pointed to Malika Nyong'o, but experience had taught me not to rush to conclusions. Sometimes the most obvious answers are the most deceptive. Before meeting with Malika again, I decided to talk to Jabari Kinte once more. I needed to understand his true role in this story, and perhaps learn more about the dirty business that Nikia had mentioned. Even in the morning, the Empire of Destiny Casino sparkled with lights and hummed with the voices of enthusiastic players. I walked through the main hall, ignoring the flashing slot machines. They had once beckoned me, promising a quick solution to all my problems. Now I knew better. This time, Jabari didn't receive me in his office, but in a private area of the restaurant. He sat at a table in the back, with his back to the wall, with a perfect view of the entire room. The habit of a man who trusts no one. Detective Okomo, he nodded without standing up. What is it this time? New questions, Mr. Kinte, about your friendship with Nikia. He smirked. I've already told you everything I know. Not everything. I placed a copy of the bank statements on the table. Over the past 6 months, you've transferred almost $150,000 to her. Too generous for just friends. Jabari shrugged. I'm a rich man. And married. Does your wife know about your investments? His gaze turned cold. Careful, detective. You're here to investigate a murder, not my personal life. When the victim is a stripper who received large sums of money from an influential man, the line between murder and personal life becomes very thin. I paused. Especially when that stripper knew she was HIV positive and could infect her sponsors. Something like fear flashed across his face. I told you, we weren't close in that sense. Then explain these messages. I showed him the printout of the correspondence found on Nikia's phone. Last night was delightful. No one can make me as happy as you do. That doesn't sound like a platonic relationship. Jabari clenched his teeth. What do you want? The truth. You were Nikia's lover. Did you know about her status? Did you get yourself tested? He was silent for a long time, then lowered his head. I found out 3 weeks ago. I received an envelope with a copy of her medical records from an anonymous source. I got tested negative, thank God. Who could have sent the documents? I don't know. Nikia suspected Malika. They had some kind of score to settle. But there could have been others victims. For example, Thelma Wilson? I noticed that name in Nikia's diary. TW is threatening again. Says she won't forgive me for Jabari. As if he ever really loved her. Jabari flinched. How do you know about Thelma? It's my job. I watched his reaction. Who is she? A former dancer from Amethyst. We were close before Nikia. She didn't accept the breakup. She threatened us both. Enough to kill? He shook his head. Thelma isn't like that. She would have caused a scandal, but not this. And you, Mr. Kinte? When you learned about the risk of infection, didn't you feel the urge to take revenge? I was furious, he admitted. But not that furious. Besides, my test was negative. I had no motive. And yet, you were one of the last people to see Nikia alive. The camera in the lobby of her building recorded your visit on the night of the murder. Why did you lie about when you last saw her? He turned noticeably pale. I didn't kill her. Yes, I went there. We argued about money. She demanded more and threatened to tell my wife. But when I left, she was alive, I swear. What time did you leave? Around 9 in the evening. Then I went straight to a charity event at the casino. I made a note in my notebook. What about drugs? Nikia mentioned some kind of business in her diary. Was she referring to you? Jabari tensed up. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Nikia wrote about someone's dirty business, threatening to expose it. Let's see what her high society clients say when they find out who's really supplying them. That's not me. His voice became harsh. I'm not involved in drugs. Nikia probably meant Malika. Malika? Many people in the music industry use drugs. There were rumors that Malika not only produced music, but also provided certain services to her clients. An interesting twist. If Nikia threatened to expose Malika's drug business, it added another motive to the one already in place. Did you see anyone else at Nikia's that evening? No, I was the last one there. Although, he frowned, remembering. When I was leaving, I thought I saw Thelma at the entrance, but I'm not sure. It was dark. Thelma Wilson. Another piece of the puzzle. After leaving the casino, I sent a request for information about Thelma Wilson and drove to the lab. I needed to check the results of the examination of the traces found in Nikia's apartment. The chief expert, Linus, greeted me with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. Detective Okomo, I have something interesting for you. He led me to the microscope. Remember the particles found under the victim's fingernails? We've identified them. They're a rare type of pomegranate powder used in the cosmetics industry. And this powder is only found in one line of cosmetics, released in a limited edition 2 years ago. Don't keep me in suspense, Linus. He smiled. The Amethyst Soul line from Mystic Beauty. Their spokesperson was Malika Nyong'o, I finished, remembering the billboard I had seen in the city. Does she collect her own brand of cosmetics? More than that, Linus handed me the report. We found microparticles of this powder in the victim's wounds. The killer used this cosmetic shortly before or during the murder. It was serious evidence. Malika wears rare cosmetics, particles of which were found on Nikia's body, but still not enough for a conviction. What else? The fibers found at the crime scene matched the type of fabric used for soundproofing studios, and also, the victim's blood test showed traces of a powerful sleeping pill. She was unconscious when she was dismembered. The picture was becoming clearer. On my way to Malika's studio, I received information about Thelma Wilson. A 30-year-old former dancer, she had quit Amethyst 8 months ago. She was now working as a choreographer on one of the shows on the Strip. She had a clean record, except for one arrest for assault. She had gotten into a fight with a colleague at a club. She deserved to be checked out, but Malika remained the prime suspect. The Rhythm Nation studio looked empty when I arrived. The receptionist said Malika wasn't there, but I noticed her car in the parking lot. I decided not to reveal myself and called from my car. Miss Nyong'o, Detective Okomo here. I need to ask you a few more questions about the Nikia Jamel case. I'm busy right now. How about tomorrow? I'm afraid it's urgent. I'm already at your studio. A long pause. Okay. Give me 15 minutes. I didn't wait and entered the building, showing my badge to the security guard. When I reached Malika's studio, I heard muffled voices behind the door. She wasn't alone. I knocked and announced, "Las Vegas police, open the door." A few seconds later, the door opened. Malika looked tense but remained calm. "Detective, I asked for 15 minutes. Who else is here?" I looked into the studio and saw a woman sitting in the corner. She was slender, with short blonde hair and an alert gaze. "My colleague, Thelma Wilson," Malika replied. "We're working on the choreography for a new music video. What a coincidence." Two women connected to Nikia and Jabari meet, just as I start looking for them. "Miss Wilson," I nodded to her. "It's good that you're here. I need to talk to both of you." I entered the studio, noticing the nervous exchange of glances between the women. "About what exactly?" Thelma asked, her voice tense. "About Nikki Jamel, and about where you both were on the night she was murdered." "I already told you," Malika began. "You said you were in the studio, but the camera footage shows that you left at 7 in the evening and didn't return until 4 in the morning. Where did you go, Malika?" She turned pale. I went home, then to a bar. I needed some fresh air." "Do you have any witnesses?" "I was alone." "That's inconvenient." I turned to Thelma. "And you, Miss Wilson? Where were you on Tuesday evening?" "At rehearsal, then at home. I can provide witnesses." "And you didn't go to Nikia's house around 9 in the evening?" Thelma flinched. "Who told you that?" "So you did go there?" She lowered her eyes. "I wanted to talk to her, about Jabari, but she wasn't there. No one answered the door." "What about you and Malika? Have you known each other long?" They exchanged glances again. "Several years," Malika replied. "We're friends. More than friends, I'd say," I remarked, looking at their hands clasped together on the table, which they quickly separated. "Together against Nikia?" "What do you mean?" Malika straightened up. "Nikia took Jabari away from Thelma, and she took your brother, Malika. Shared pain, shared revenge." Thelma suddenly laughed. "You think I killed her because of Jabari? That narcissistic jerk? I'm glad I got rid of him." "Then why did you come to Nikia?" "To warn her. About Jabari. About how dangerous he is when he feels threatened." Malika stood up abruptly. "Detective, do you have a warrant or specific charges? If not, we'd like to get back to work." I looked her straight in the eye. "Amethyst Soul Pomade. Familiar?" She froze. "We found particles of it under Nikia's fingernails and in her wounds. Only you have this powder, Malika." "That doesn't prove anything. We met shortly before her death. She could have..." She faltered. "Could have what? Scratched you?" In self-defense, perhaps? I took a step toward her. How do you explain the soundproofing material fibers at the crime scene? Or the sleeping pills in Nikia's blood, the same ones we found in your bag at the entrance? I was bluffing about the bag, but her reaction told me I'd hit the mark. You had no right to search my belongings without a warrant. We didn't, but thank you for confirming that you have sleeping pills. Thelma looked between us, clearly frightened. Malika, what is she talking about? Malika slowly sank into a chair. Thelma has nothing to do with this. What exactly? I leaned toward her. Nikia's murder? A long pause. Then Malika looked up. Do you know about my brother? Aaron? Yes, I know he killed himself after finding out he was HIV positive. Did Nikia infect him? She did it on purpose. Malika's voice trembled. He was a young, talented musician. He fell in love with her, and she used him as a guinea pig, as another victim in her twisted experiment of revenge. Malika, don't, Thelma whispered. You don't understand. Malika turned to her. He was my little brother, my only family. She knew her status and hid it from him. And then, when he found out, she laughed, told him he deserved it, like all men. I saw the rage and pain distort her face. He couldn't cope. He couldn't bear the thought of the disease, of the betrayal. I found his body, on the sidewalk below his balcony. And you decided to take revenge. It wasn't a question. I didn't plan it, Malika said quietly. I wanted to hold her accountable legally. I gathered evidence that she deliberately infected people. I found her diary, copied the pages, and sent them to the victims. I wanted them to file a class action lawsuit. But she found out. She came to my house and threatened to ruin my career by telling everyone that my brother had committed suicide because of AIDS. The music industry is still full of prejudice, and she also threatened to tell about something else. About drugs? Malika shuddered. Not exactly. Let's just say that some parties in the industry go beyond the law. Nikia used to go to them. She knew too many people and too much. That's not enough to kill someone. No, it's not, she sighed deeply. The last straw was when I found out she was trying to seduce Thelma, to infect her too. Thelma sniffed quietly. I refused her. I didn't know about her status then. She came to me that night, Malika continued. She said she wouldn't stop, that it was a game for her to watch people break down when they found out their diagnosis. She bragged that Aaron was a weakling who couldn't handle the truth. Her voice became detached. I offered her a drink. I spiked it with sleeping pills. I just wanted to talk when she was more malleable, to convince her to stop. But when she lost consciousness, something broke inside me. You killed her right here? In the studio? In the isolated recording room? Perfect soundproofing, Malika said, as if in a trance. At first, I just hit her. I thought that would be enough. But then, I saw a letter opener on the shelf, and I thought about all the lives she had destroyed, about my brother lying on the sidewalk, about Thelma, who could have been next, about dozens of others I don't even know. So you stabbed her? It was like it wasn't me, like someone else was controlling my body. By the time I realized what was happening, she was already dead. What about the dismemberment? The note? I panicked. I had to get rid of the body. She closed her eyes. I watched a lot of crime shows. I thought if I dismembered her, it would be harder to identify her. The note, it was a message. Not just to her, but to the whole world. That you can't play with other people's lives with impunity. Thelma cried quietly in the corner. I didn't know anything, I swear. I only found out yesterday when Malika snapped. I slowly took out my handcuffs. Malika Nyong'o, you are under arrest on suspicion of murdering Nikia Jamel. You have the right to remain silent. Malika didn't resist when I put the handcuffs on her. She just said quietly, You know, detective, I don't feel sorry. She was a monster hiding behind a beautiful mask. How many more lives would she have destroyed? How many more people would she have infected? the system wouldn't have stopped her. It's not up to you to decide who deserves to live and who doesn't. Then who is it up to? She smiled bitterly. The judges who would have given her a couple of years for deliberate infection? Or the doctors who would have just shrugged their shoulders and said she was sick, but had a right to privacy? My brother is dead, and others will die because of her too. On the way to the station, I thought about her words. Was Nikia Jamel an innocent victim? No. Did she deserve to die like that? No. But the line between justice and revenge sometimes becomes almost invisible. Thelma Wilson, questioned separately, confirmed her innocence, which was backed up by a solid alibi for the time of the murder. She was indeed at rehearsal with 24 witnesses. She came to Nikia later, after the murder, unaware of what had happened. Darius Tambo, upon learning of Malika's arrest, came to the station himself. I should have guessed. She called me after my brother's death, asking about Nikia, about my diagnosis. I thought she was just gathering information for the lawsuit. Perhaps that was the case initially, I replied, but grief and rage pushed her further. Jabari Kinte showed no particular emotion when he learned of the outcome. I feel sorry for Malika. She's a good person who got caught up in a terrible situation. And you don't feel sorry for Nikia? Nikia. He paused. Nikia was a broken person who broke others, a vicious cycle of pain. When all the formalities were completed and Malika Nyong'o was officially charged with first-degree murder, I returned to my office. A copy of Nikia's diary was lying on the table. I flipped through the last few pages, looking for answers. Sometimes I feel like I don't deserve to live after everything I've done. But then I remember how I felt when I found out about my diagnosis, how I prayed that whoever infected me would suffer just as much. And I realize I'm just an instrument of karma, an eye for an eye. It's always been that way. The writings of a person lost in their own pain and revenge, like Malika in the end. In court, Malika Nyong'o pleaded guilty, but refused to make a deal with the prosecution. I did what I thought was necessary, she told the judge, and I will accept any punishment. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 15 years. Thelma Wilson was at every hearing, promising to wait. A few weeks after the sentencing, I received a letter from Malika. Detective Okomo, I know you were just doing your job, and probably from a legal standpoint, I deserve my punishment. But I want you to know, I don't consider myself a monster. The monster was Nikia, who enjoyed other people's suffering. Maybe in another life I would have done things differently. I would have reported it to the police and sought justice. But when I saw my brother lying broken on the sidewalk while Nikia went on with her life, I realized one simple truth. Sometimes the system is incapable of protecting the innocent. Sometimes someone has to take matters into their own hands. I know that such thoughts are dangerous in society. If everyone takes justice into their own hands, chaos will ensue. But what can you do when the system fails? When a criminal slips through legal loopholes and continues to destroy lives? I'm not asking for understanding or forgiveness. I just want you to know that I made my choice with my eyes wide open. And even sitting in this cell, I feel that justice has prevailed, even if not in the way the law prescribes. I sat with this letter in my hands for a long time, not knowing what to think. In 20 years on the police force, I've seen too many shades of gray to believe in absolute justice. Sometimes victims become criminals, and criminals become victims. And who are we to judge where the line is drawn? The Nikia Jamel case was closed. Malika Nyong'o served her sentence. The other participants in this drama tried to move on with their lives. Darius Tambo founded a foundation to support HIV-infected people. Thelma Wilson regularly visited Malika in prison. Jabari Kinte divorced his wife and left Las Vegas. And I continued to work, searching for truth amid lies, justice amid chaos, sometimes finding it, sometimes losing it, but never stopping trying, because in a world full of broken mirrors, where everyone sees only a distorted reflection of the truth. Someone has to pick up the pieces and try to restore the whole picture, even knowing that perfection is unattainable. And in this, perhaps, lies true justice, in the constant, unceasing pursuit of it, despite all the imperfections of our world and ourselves.